So in this week 11 of this course, we'll try to understand how to plan and conduct courses online and in blended mode. So I have broken this down into 5 modules. First is the introduction to online courses themselves, try to understand the various nuances associated with online courses. And we'll get into the details of planning online courses. And module 3 will be about the tools and techniques that are delivering online courses, right? Because much of the online course is reliant on technology. In module 4, we will now look at a variation of these online courses which are called as blended mode courses, which essentially includes some elements of online, some elements of in-person, or as we call it, offline access to the content and other interactions. Finally, we will again talk about the details of how to go about delivering blended mode courses. Okay, so without further ado, let us jump straight into module 1, which is essentially the introduction to online courses. It is useful to understand the evolution or the history of online education in general, right? So when you look at the global education setup, historically we all have been used to delivering education in a classroom, be it a school or in a university, in a college and so on, wherein the course instructor is right there standing in front of the students, and on the other side facing the lecturer or the instructor or a whole bunch of students, right? So this is our classical lecture room or a classroom, right? So, but then slowly things started becoming a challenge, because to deliver courses in this particular mode, you wanted both the teacher and the taught, as we say, both in the same place. Now, this also became an impediment from a student point of view or from a learner point of view. There was a restriction saying that only this set of students can learn. So, in order to expand the opportunities for learning to people who are not really students, right? So there were other types of learning that were explored, and that is how the open education, right? So open education or open universities concept came up, right? So wherein people said that those who are already working, we will let you learn through, say, we used to send textbooks and learning material by post, right? So if you look at the open university concept, right? So we have, within the Indian context, we have the Indira Gandhi National Open University, IGNOU, right? So which offers distance education, right? So we use the term distance education. So when you talk about the distance education, wherein the material gets sent by post and people learn, but then that itself had its own limitations, because there used to be delays, and in reaching the material also becomes outdated. If it is outdated, how do I reach updated learning material to the learners? All those things become a challenge, and eventually that gave rise to the online education, which is eventually delivering digital content instead of the traditional book, pen and paper. Okay, now when it comes to the engineering education as well, right? So this has opened up enormous amount of opportunities in higher education, right? So now people are able to see. We have still, especially in India, we have still not reached a stage where where online education has replaced engineering education. In fact, as we speak, at the time of recording this particular lecture, we are still not allowed to offer technology programs in online mode for obvious reasons, right? So we can still only do certification courses and so on, but full-fledged degree programs are still not allowed, at least as far as engineering is concerned. In other words, BTech online, MTech online. So there are still lots of restrictions on what you can do, how much you can do in online mode. But having said that, online education is serving a huge gap in in the education system, wherein if there are limitations in an engineering college, right, in terms of the specific courses that they are able to deliver, now we have the option of augmenting it and complementing it with online courses. Right? I think that's a big step forward in improving the quality of engineering education, right? And of course, COVID-19 happened, right? And that completely changed the landscape of education, right? So previously, online courses were intended to be offered in very specific context, specific scenarios by, with people having specific permissions and so on. But then when COVID-19 happened, then we were left with no choice but to move ahead, right? We could not stop moving forward delivering education just because of the pandemic. I think that was possibly the biggest catalyst that happened, for which benefited the education space, right? And that completely accelerated the entire adoption of online education, online learning, both from the learner's point of view as well as the educator's point of view as well. Now let's get into the specifics of trying to understand what is an online course. If I have to define online course, an online course is a form of education delivered entirely through the internet, right? In fact, delivered entirely through the internet and delivered entirely through digital form, right? So which means that the learners will be able to access the lectures, assignments and assessments remotely, right? Which means that this provides enormous amount of flexibility and accessibility, especially to the learners, to access these course contents, and we call it as anytime, anywhere learning, right? Which means that it provides diverse schedules, diverse locations, right? So this really opened up enormous amount of flexibility and access to these online course materials. So these courses are very well structured, just like our in-person courses that we delivered, but they are self-paced. As I said, so they offer anytime, anywhere learning, which means that people who have access, who have the ability to grasp material faster, they can move at a fast pace. People who do need to go in a systematic, slow manner, so they can also do it at their own pace, right? We jokingly say now students have the option to view these videos or online material at 2x speed, or they can pause at their own pace and go slow, right? So that is the enormous amount of flexibility that online courses give you, which your traditional courses can never give you. Okay. One very interesting side effect of these courses is that they can be interactive and multimedia rich, right? So you can imagine that if I am teaching an engineering course, right, if I am not using digital content, right, whether it be online or offline, but if I am not using digital content, it becomes very difficult for me to convey certain complex concepts, right? And of course, how can I teach a course on digital design without showing the graphical view of circuits, right? And if I don't use digital tools, and if the instructor starts drawing those circuits manually, right, so half the time in the classroom goes in drawing those circuits. Of course, we can always have we always have a school of thought which says that if the instructor is taking time to draw those circuits, so that is the time that is also available to the learners for them to assimilate what is going on, right? But having said that, if you combine this digital learning with online learning, so the students will still get the same benefit by pausing and reflecting on that particular circuit for a longer time, right? So which means that it immediately exposes the possibilities, right? So makes available larger possibilities in terms of creating very rich animations which will illustrate the points in a much more learner friendly manner. So these are all. So basically when you look at an online course, the key component is that the content is digital in nature and it is made available for anytime, anywhere learning. And very interesting dimension associated with online courses is this concept of synchronous and asynchronous learning. Right? Synchronous learning happens in real time. Right? So wherein one of the essential elements of synchronous learning is that the learner and the instructor are there at the same time exchanging that information and content, interacting with each other, okay? Which means that this is a live interaction, and because it is an online live interaction, which means that the learner is in a different place and the instructor is in a different place. So we call this as remote interaction. Live interaction, live remote interaction is the characteristic of synchronous learning, right? So all these live webinars that we talk about or online classes, that we used to do during COVID, they are all examples of synchronous learning. Asynchronous learning does not have real-time interaction, right? So, for example, this very course is an example of asynchronous learning wherein the learners, such as yourselves, are provided with the access to the videos, pre-recorded videos, which you can access anytime, anywhere, right? So you can access it from your home, you can access it from your institution, and you can access it on your mobile phone, you can access it on your laptop, right? So this is essentially anytime, anywhere learning, right? So which means that the essential components will be recorded lectures, there will be discussion boards for interacting with other learners and so on. But all of this is happening asynchronous. So the key essential element of asynchronous is that the interaction is not live. Okay, so synchronous learning has got its own benefits, right? It enables interactivity, right? So this is a nice middle ground between the old school classroom learning versus the modern remote learning, right? So which means that it gives you the benefits of in-class teaching wherein the students or the learners will be able to ask doubts instantaneously and get it resolved instantaneously, right? So they don't have to rely on asynchronous capabilities such as sending an email or using a discussion forum for getting their doubts resolved. So that is definitely a benefit of synchronous learning, okay? But then it requires, that we need to create a schedule which is both convenient to the instructor as well as the learner, okay? And of course, there is a huge dependency on remote connectivity, right? So, and remote connectivity happens over the internet. So, good, stable internet connectivity is an essential prerequisite for synchronous learning, which will enable interactivity. On the other hand, asynchronous learning offers enormous amount of flexibility, as I already mentioned, because it supports self-paced study and also it may offer much broader accessibility, right? Across right now, when you are offering a specific course in a synchronous manner, then you will have to pre-create a cohort of students who are the only people for whom that particular course will be accessible. But whereas if you do it in an asynchronous manner, you may have much broader flexibility. So across across different time zones, across different different kinds of students, different levels of students, all these flexibility suddenly opens up in asynchronous learning. The benefits of online courses for learners, definitely, as we keep saying, flexibility in time and place, right? Time and space, as we say, right? Which means that learners can learn from anywhere, learners can learn at any time, okay? The second benefit is accessibility for diverse set of learners, right? As I said, you don't necessarily have to pitch a given course for only one level of learning, right? So, which means that you can have people having varied abilities, varied understanding, and if somebody is already comfortable with a given concept, they have the ability to simply skip over and move on, right? This very module, if there is somebody who is already familiar with online courses, I'm sure you will just do a fast forward right now and then move on to to listen to what I have to say next. And if you are already familiar with what I have to say next, you are absolutely free to move on further as well, right? Which means that this is capable of catering to diverse set of learners. And this also provides opportunities for personalized learning, right? So if with appropriate use of online learning technology, we are able to provide personalized learning experiences, right? Which means that learners can be given personalized feedback. I can track the progress of individual learners. We can create leaderboards, right? So many such options open up by combining the digital technologies along with the online learning tools, okay? And the biggest benefit, as I see it, is the scalability for large student groups, right? If we are looking at the traditional classrooms, there is always physical limitation, which is there because of the size of the classroom, right? So the moment the classroom, you start making the classroom larger and larger to accommodate more and more students inside the classroom, then you will have to invest more and more in additional tools, right? For example, in a traditional classroom which can accommodate 20 students, you probably don't even need any digital technology, right? So that the classic chalk and talk will work. But then the moment you expand the classroom sizes, you will need a slide projector, you will need, if you make it even bigger, you will probably need a microphone and speakers and so on. So whereas if you adapt the online learning technology, there is absolutely virtually no limit, right? So there are very successful online courses from which lakhs of students have completed their programs, right? So that is the reach and the scalability that online courses offer. Now, as far as instructors are concerned, right, it gives you flexibility in time and space, the same flexibility that the learners have, even the course instructors have, right? Even, if you recall our experiences during COVID online, COVID-19, we offered courses from sitting at home because we were not allowed to go to our colleges, right? So that same flexibility carries for any online course. Now we can also do, right? Now it also gives additional flexibility for teachers to offer, additional classes outside of their regular class hours as well, right? Now, it also provides a broader reach, as I kept repeating, because across time and space, right? Now, suddenly your courses, if you are a great teacher and if you have a great course to offer, then more people across geographies also can benefit, especially if you offer it in asynchronous mode. Okay, and it also enormously increases your efficiency. Let me give you a very simple example of how it increases your efficiency if you are teaching an online course as opposed to your traditional classroom course. Just take the fact of attendance marking, right? So if we are still doing the traditional way of calling out the names of the attendance, larger the class, more time, greater is the time it takes, right? But in online classes, right, we never take attendance the traditional way. If somebody is already logged in, you can get a report of the people who have logged in for your online class, and your attendance is taken in a few seconds, right? So that is just one example of the increased efficiency that instructors can obtain in online courses. Of course, this extends much beyond the attendance marking. We get into assessments and evaluation. Much of these things can be automated, greatly enhancing the efficiency for instructors. Okay, so now, of course, online teaching and online courses are not without their challenges, right? So the biggest problem, right, that I'm sure you also would have experienced is the student engagement and motivation, right? How do we know that they are present, right? When I'm saying present in quotes, what I mean is, how do we know that they are engaged with the instructor, correct? Now, we know that many of us have been experienced teachers, and we have the ability to look into the eyes of a learner when we are teaching, into the eyes of a student when we are teaching, and then instantly say whether they get it or they are struggling, right? Now, we lose those kind of abilities to engage with the students, but that is one biggest problem, right? So there are, again, so we will have to, as learners, as we go along in this particular course, we will talk about a few techniques that we can use to ensure that the students are really present, that they are engaged with the learner, even if it is not synchronous. Even in asynchronous mode, it is possible to engage with the learners, right? The second, we saw in the definition of online course itself that one of the core prerequisites is technology, right? So there could be technology issues that may break the flow, right? You can recall all our COVID-19 experiences, right? Every now and then you have to keep saying, are you able to hear me? Right? Because you never know, right, at what time the internet connection drops, and you don't even realize you would have done 3 or 4 slides without even realizing that you have lost the connection, and then somebody will put in the chat window saying that, oh, you know what, we lost you for the last 5 minutes, so we'll have to redo it, right? So those kind of challenges will be there. And we also have to worry about the digital divide, right? By saying that online course is the only way in which the students can learn in a given course, we also exclude people who do not have access to the technology necessary to access it, right? So which means that when I'm saying not having access, even those who have access, right? Now we have to be cognizant of the fact that even there are different levels of these technologies, right? When you talk about the internet plans, we have different internet plans. We have the 2.4 gigahertz internet plan, we have 5 gigahertz internet plan, we have the fiber optics internet plan, right? So all those things, they do cost, right? So we have to ensure that the online courses that we teach are delivered which can operate at a reasonably priced technology levels, right? It is not fair to expect that they will have high-end access to high-end technology. Okay, so that is one thing. So which is where one other aspect that I will be touching up later on is this whole concept of technology service providers, right? So we have to ensure that these platforms, online learning platforms, are technology friendly, which can provide people access to these online courses without very high expectations on the kind of technology they have access to. Okay. Now, all of us have gone through this, right? So when we start teaching online, now there is an enormous amount of preparedness that we have to account for, right? As instructors, there is, in addition to being subject matter experts in our own subjects, then we have to be conversant with all these online tools, which we will have to learn again to address these challenges that we talked about, right? So student engagement and motivation, which means that mere ability to speak out and record lectures may not be good enough, especially if we are teaching very complex engineering subjects, right? So we may have to know how to use, for example, digital pens, right, in an effective manner. How do you annotate slides with your own markings when you are doing this lecture, right? So I'm not doing any of those things in this kind of a course because it is not needed for this kind of a course, right? But if I'm doing a course on digital circuits, if I'm doing a course on algorithms, if I'm doing a course on flowcharts, right, I may have to draw, I may have to show the flow, right? So which means that as an instructor, for the kind of courses I am teaching, I should know what are the appropriate tools and I should be ready to learn, right? So we also saw in one of the earlier weeks about digital literacy, right? So that digital literacy that I talked about becomes extremely relevant and even imperative when you are teaching an online course. Okay. Of course, the other thing is about maintaining academic integrity, right? Maintaining academic integrity in an online course continues to be a major struggle. So we all have to be conscious about it. Maybe to some extent we have to accept it, and we have to figure out ways to not necessarily counter it, but to work with it, right? So, how do you deal with the presence, while being really absent, right? How do you know that somebody else has not logged in for an online course on behalf of somebody else? And we know how to counter that. And we used to say, no, you have to turn on your camera, right? Things like that. So, but to me, the other integrity issue is that, suddenly you say that we talked about engagement. So when you talk about engagement, so one technique to maintain engagement, to conduct polls while you are teaching a course. Now, when you are teaching a course and when you are conducting a poll, right? So how do you know that they are responding to the poll on their own, spontaneously, or are they taking some other help? Even when I say that, this is not for grading, people, when they have a choice to give the right answer, through whatever means, they will end up giving the right answer, right? So that is the issue that we have to deal with, and this is not even an option if you are doing a course in an asynchronous manner, right? In an asynchronous manner, when you do a poll, now you have no idea whether we can only hope and suggest that they should give a response without using any external help, so that the online platform can guide them, right, in a better way. So I'll be talking about online platforms, adaptive learning, and things like that in a later module. Okay. But then these challenges are there. We have to be conscious about that. Now let us get into the key components of an online course. Okay. The most important component is content, right? The content is delivered, the core content type is video, right? So videos are the most important and mandatory component of any online course, right? So yes, I have come across online courses which do not have videos, but then they do provide lots of readings and quizzes and so on. But then, to me, it is an incomplete online course if it does not contain videos. And of course, those videos should be augmented with reading material, which is typically in the form of slides. It could be lecture notes given in the form of PDF, or it could be links to other reading material of books and presentations and so on, right? And there should also be quizzes, right? When we will talk about assessments in detail, in fact, as part of a separate module course in itself, but then assessments and quizzes are also essential components of the content of a course. But then, merely providing content does not make something into an online course. Okay? An online course has to necessarily provide means for communication, right? Means for communication between the instructor and the learner, but also amongst the learners as well, right? Remember, when we moved this whole learning from the classroom to the online world, we have snatched away two things already. We have snatched away the ability to interact with the instructor, especially if it is an asynchronous learning. We also have snatched away the ability to speak to the person sitting to my side, right? That used to be the classic element of learning, peer learning, right? You nudge somebody and says, no, I didn't understand this part of it. So what is the replacement for that, right? The replacement for that are discussion forums, right? Discussion forums are asynchronous learning methods wherein somebody can post a question and it could be responded to by the instructor, it could be responded to by the teaching assistant, it could be responded to by other learners as well, peer learning, right? The enormous amount of learning happens through peer learning as well, right? There could be situations where we could also be providing, on-call support, right? So there could be somewhere, these days where people talk about personal tutoring, tuitions and so on. So they will say they will provide you a video and then they will schedule a call, right? Say online video call to resolve doubts at a personal level as well. Okay? Assessments are an integral part of online courses. Remember, there is there's no campus, there is no classroom for us to fall back on. So assessments also have to be online. So we need to incorporate online tests, assignments, activities, projects, and all of these things, which means that the traditional way of doing all of these things have to be replaced by the digital online way of doing things. Okay? Now, as we said, there is a large dependency on technology, right? If something doesn't work, where do they turn to, right? So we need to have the ability to provide technical support for all kinds of issues that students may face, right? At the very least, right, they could have simply forgotten their password. So there should be, who do they contact for resetting the password? Is there a self-help available, right? So for resolving issues, right? So that is one side of things. But on top of that, if you are offering multiple courses, right, in a larger context, right? So if you are offering an online certification program with multiple courses in it, right? And you are saying now there are mandatory courses and then there are these optional courses that are available. So how do you provide help? How do you provide academic advice? That is one aspect of it. Then we also have the concept of teaching assistants, right? So we want to provide help, and especially for engineering courses, if there are online lab activities that they have to complete, where do they turn to help, right? For help. So that also is an essential component of an online course. Let us turn our attention to online learning models. Okay. Now, we have courses which are fully online, right? Wherein the instructors and the learners never meet face to face. Okay. Now, if it is asynchronous, there is absolutely zero possibility of any interactivity. But then, if you have a synchronous, fully online course, then there is some possibility of live interaction between the instructors and the learners. But then the key characteristic is that they never meet face to face. Now, obviously, there are limitations to this. Now, there are hybrid models that are emerging where the learners and instructors meet face to face in a very planned, structured manner as part of that. Okay, so in fact, this is something that has been there even in our Open University distance learning mode, right? You remember we still have the study centers, right? The study centers are the places wherein these people who have registered for distance learning, distance education, they will go there, and then some moderator or course instructor will come to clarify doubts, right? So that is the exact model that has been replicated in these hybrid models, right? So that is why you have, in a systematic manner, you say that once in 2 weeks, once in a term, once in a semester, whatever is the most suitable and appropriate model. So as part of that some schedule, people will meet. Okay. In fact, I have towards the end, I have the last 2 modules of this particular course itself is going to focus on blended learning. But then we also have heard about MOOCs, massive open online courses, right? Now, these are, firstly, let us look at each of the terms there. Massive. Massive means it is large in terms of the number of learners who take each course. When I am talking about massive, we are really talking about tens of thousands, if not lakhs of learners. That is one aspect of massive. The second aspect of massive is the amount of choices that are given, right? In a typical on-campus program, the number of courses can be 10, 15, 20, maybe 50, maybe 100. But when we get into the massive space, we are talking about thousands of courses that are available. That's why it is called as massive. The second term there is open. So these courses are open to any learner, right? What they will do is they will state certain prerequisites for these courses, but they don't restrict access to these courses, right? Which means that it opens up access to these courses across age groups, across academic levels, right? So you may be having a very, very smart 12th grade student who may be capable of grasping the contents of, say, a master's level mathematics course. Why not, right? So that is what it opens up these opportunities. That's why it is called as an open course. And by definition, they are online, because if it has to be massive, it has to be online, right? So because we want to remove the restrictions of space that is there when you offer a course in offline mode. Okay, which means that in order to be able to cater to these tens of thousands of learners for thousands of courses, it requires enormous support from technology, right? So this technology, there are very specialized pieces of technologies which are capable of handling such lakhs of learners across thousands of courses. It is very interesting to observe that the student expectations are very different when it comes to online courses when you compare it to in-person or in-class courses, right? Just the learning preferences itself, right? So now their expectation that there will be enormous good amount of digital content that is available. So that is one expectation that will come, right? So especially when you talk about complex engineering courses, you would expect lots of animations of complex concepts. You want to see photographs of real things, right? So if you are teaching a course in science, biology, or very complex engineering part, mechanical engineering, you want to show them, they want to see the real pictures, how does it do, how do you break it open, because all these things are possible in the digital world. Now, if I am having a big boiler that I want to explain what are the parts of a boiler, I can't take a boiler to the classroom. But then in the online course, I can always tear it open, show them the digital views of those parts, and there are very nice technologies that are available. We can interactively, with animations, we can show them how you can assemble them together, how you can disassemble them together. All of these things are possible in the digital online way. So that is something that they will expect. In fact, there are tools available which can even make them interactive. So what they will do is, if there is a machine that you want them to be able to put together, they will scatter all the parts of that particular machine on the screen, and using the mouse, they will expect them to assemble them in the right order and recreate that particular machine. So that is the interactive part of it. Okay, interactive and hands-on. So these are all the expectations that are there, which means that merely delivering the lectures with video content is not going to help. Communication, right? So they will expect that because especially if you are offering an asynchronous course, right? So they cannot even raise their hand and say, can you please repeat that? And of course, they have the ability to pause it and rewind it. But then if they are going to hear the same thing again, it may or may not help at all, right? So which means that as instructors, we have to remember that we get only one opportunity to convey something, which means that the communication of that has to be very clear and concise. That is purely the delivery part of it I'm telling about, right? Which means that when I want to convey a message, convey a concept, I have only one opportunity, and that has to be done well, right? It is perfectly fine to repeat that concept in a different way, just in case the first time I conveyed it is not clear. That is one aspect of the delivery. But the next other aspect of it itself is that the course objectives, the deadline, right? These things we can be a little loose when we are doing an on-campus course, right? So most of the times we'll ask the students to come to our office, we will tell something, or we'll send an email in the last minute, right? I will say that I will announce it in the next class. Those kinds of flexibility we don't have, right? Everything has to be pre-planned very clearly and communicated to the learners up front, right? Including how many assignments will be there, how many quizzes will be there, what will be the grading criteria, right? And what kind of help will be available, right? So what should they do if they get stuck, right? All of these things have to be very clearly communicated. Okay? The other thing which can frustrate the students if it is not done well is feedback, right? So you should remember that most of the times if somebody is doing an online course, they are doing it over and above something which they are doing it on a daily basis, right? So what we call as the day job, right? You could be offering this online course to a working professional. So the working professionals are all working from 9 to 5. That's probably a very optimistic estimate, right? But then nevertheless, once they go home, they will be going through the courses. So they will be putting in a lot of effort on the assignments and homeworks that you are doing. So the least that they expect is a timely feedback. timely grading, right? And not just the feedback, right? Merely we should not say that, okay, no, for this particular assignment you get 3 marks out of 5, right? So they do expect that we are able to give feedback and saying why is it 3 marks and not 5 out of 5. So all of these things have to be done in a very timely manner. So that is a big expectation from the learners when it comes to online courses, specifically online courses. Okay, and when we talk about collaboration, we have to be able to provide the students to collaborate with other learners who are belonging to the same cohort, right? Because normally from an education point of view, and when you talk about employability, course outcomes, right? You would have already studied that that course outcomes. When we are writing course outcomes, there is one of the biggest program specific program outcomes would be to the ability to work in teams. So if we don't give the collaboration opportunities and create activities which are collaborative in nature, that teamwork skills don't get developed. How do they coordinate, right? How do they distribute the work? How do they even divide the work? How do they take a complex problem and divide it into smaller modules that can be worked upon in parallel without any dependency, right? All these, the ability, if you give them opportunity to work in group projects in an online mode, right? So they will develop these abilities, and it is as instructors we have to create mechanisms to develop those skills. And I keep emphasizing this technical support, on-demand support, because we said anytime, anywhere learning, then the expectation is also that anytime, anywhere support, right? When I am talking about support, it could be technical support, and add to this, you add other kinds of support, including teaching assistantship and so on. Remember, they may not be doing it during daytime, so we are talking about anytime, anywhere. So there could be working professionals, they are doing it later in the evening, late in the night even perhaps. So some mechanism to provide timely help is definitely an expectation that is there. So what is our role as faculty in an online course, right? So we have to don the role as a facilitator, right? Because we have to facilitate very meaningful student engagement, right? So we should not think that, okay, I have recorded this particular video, my job is done, right? So which means that we have to collaborate as a team. So which means that there will be the course, as a course instructor we will be there will be teaching assistants, there will be technical support people, right? All of them have to deliver a very holistic, interactive, satisfactory experience to the learners, right? So we have to give that. If there are discussion forums that are available, as instructors, we also have to encourage those discussions, participate. It is called as a discussion. It is not a Q&A, right? Discussion means that there has to be a lot of back and forth that needs to happen. So technology should be there to make that possible. And of course, we as instructors also should be there to make that possible. Okay? And interactive activities. You see, all these things make a lot of sense in engineering education, right? So interactive activities has to be there. So we have to be able to work and set up online labs, right? So that is where if we are teaching more of a theoretical kind of courses, it works out well, but it becomes more and more difficult. As I say, it becomes easier said than done to make interactive activities possible across the entire spectrum of engineering. But as much as possible, we should do that. And of course, timely responses is something which is our responsibility as well. Adapting our teaching strategies for online mode is also an important thing, right? If you are used to offline teaching mode, right, in the classrooms, one of the key key ingredients is to keep asking questions, saying, do you have any questions? Do you have any doubts? That is one way of doing it. Another way, which I personally use, is to ask a question and then gauge their understanding of things that have been delivered so far based on the response that they give, right? So how do you adapt this to online mode? In the online mode, if you are interacting, suppose you assume that you are teaching a synchronous online class. If you are doing a synchronous online class, then your online tool should be having a chat window. So you say that in the chat window, you pause for a minute and then say, please type if you have any questions. Because it may not be practical to enable the microphone if the classroom has got 1,000 students, right? So then you say that you please type in the chat window. Sometimes opening the chat window for 1,000 students also becomes a challenge. Then what you do is you appoint a teaching assistant to monitor the chat window, right? And then the teaching assistant will respond as much as possible. Otherwise, they will prompt, saying that, this particular concept does not, there are lots of questions coming up, you may have to repeat. So that is the interaction that will happen between the teaching assistant and the instructor. So this is the moderation that I am talking about, right? So we have to adapt. So this kind of things we don't do we don't have to do in the classroom setting. Continuous professional development is something that is applicable to us instructors as well, right? So there are two levels at which we have to do continual professional development. I am sure as subject matter experts in our own areas, we are constantly updating ourselves and trying to understand what are the new developments happening in my subject, right? If I am an operating system expert in computer science, right, I have to update myself to understand what is happening in cloud computing, what is serverless computing, right? How is scheduling happening in a distributed system, right? So these are all the ways in which I will keep updating myself, which probably is already happening as a responsible professional educator. But this also now, when you throw in the online classes to the mix, it also implies that you have to be equally more familiar with the online methods for delivering these advanced concepts as well, right? So the traditional way of doing laboratory activities gets replaced by these online labs, right? So how do you learn, how do you find out what are the online labs that are available? How do you enable it for the students? How do you give them access? How do you utilize them effectively, right, across thousands of learners? So this we need to keep on learning, right? How do you set questions? In fact, in the current context, I cannot avoid throwing in AI into the mix, right? So how do I bring in AI tools into my learning to make to give better examples, to give more examples, to give more practice assessments, to give new problems, right? So this is all the question of continual learning even for us as course instructors. Okay? So finally, I want to touch upon this whole new concept of online learning platforms. So far we talked about online courses, but you should remember that these online courses are always delivered in the larger context, right? So this online course, when you talk about the traditional classroom course, where is this classroom course being delivered? This classroom course on databases is being delivered in, say, in a BTech computer science program. in this specific college, in this specific campus, right? Now, where are online courses? What is the context where these online courses are being delivered, right? So that is where these online learning platforms come into the picture, right? An online learning platform is an integrated digital environment, and invariably they are web-based, but they could be app-based as well, right, in terms of the delivery modes, but they are internet digital environments, right, which is a centralized environment, which is a placeholder, which offers a placeholder for your online courses, right? So that online placeholder includes the course content, the resources, the tools, right? So this becomes a one-stop shop, as we say, for online learning. Okay, so which means that in a single place they will be able to engage with multiple online courses, right? So which means that there is one course that is offered, they get curious, they want to learn a follow-on course, or they want to learn a variety of courses, right? So it is not, that is where it differs from, an online learning platform differs from, say, YouTube, right? So YouTube is just a random collection, if you ask me, right? There is no systematic way in which those videos are organized, right? They are all individual billions, right? Billions of individual videos that are out there, which means that if I want to learn something, right, no doubt, these YouTube videos contain enormous amount of learning content. But then as a learner, as a student, if I want, I have to go and search and search and search. And of course, YouTube offers beautiful tools which will recommend videos based on the video that you just saw, but then it is just a recommendation, right? So it becomes very difficult to use that because it is highly unorganized, right? So by design, that is the way it is, right? So the purpose of YouTube is that, right, of video sharing platforms. And when I'm saying YouTube, it could mean any video sharing platform, including so many others that are out there, right? So that is unstructured. So the other more important thing that online learning platforms bring is structure to the whole learning experience, right? Now, if you have to just look around what popular online learning platforms are there, this very online course is not offered as a standalone thing somewhere in some corner, right, in some website, right? Now, this is offered as part of the much larger initiative of NPTEL or SWAYAM, right, of Government of India. So this is a massive learning platform, right? So this, wherein we have so many thousands of courses that are available, online courses that are available, right? So that is what we are talking about. This is, now for many people I know, so this is a one-stop shop, right? So for many college students, now NPTEL SWAYAM becomes a one-stop shop because the colleges now, universities now recognize courses that are done in this platform. So they don't have to look elsewhere for online courses, right? So that is, this is a public Government of India supported platform. Along similar lines, globally we have several such platforms, right? I'm sure all of you would have heard of Coursera, right? So this is a very specific commercial platform. Why is it commercial, right? So although they do provide MOOC. What is MOOC? Massive open online courses. Now they do offer online open online courses, which means that right, so there are lots of courses which you can do without paying. But then the commercial aspect of it comes when you want any certificate and so on. So now what happens? Many universities offer courses on that particular platform. So you are free to go through that course, but then they say if you want a certificate to say that you completed this particular course from this particular university, then you'll have to pay, right? The payment will not be very large, right? So they may, for example, if it is an international course offered by a university which is there in the United States, they may say that you may have to pay, say, $20 to get that particular certification, depending upon, I don't know how important, it may vary, right? But the point is, it is commercial in nature, right? So they do charge, right? Which means that what do they give you in return? So it gives you credibility. Now you can, they give you credentials which can be used, as proper authenticated credentials for finding a job, add it to your resume and so on. So if your objective is only to learn, then obviously you don't have to pay. But if you do want those credentials and you want to use it for jobs and things like that, so then obviously there is a commercial angle to that. Okay. Now there's a lot of interesting things that are also happening, especially in the online education space in India itself. Lots of online learning platforms are emerging, wherein those platforms provide the technology, okay, for offering courses. So they collaborate with educators, okay. So they collaborate with individual educators, they collaborate with educational institutions to offer courses, as I just now mentioned. So you will have big universities who will go on to, who will tie up these technology service providers, whose only job is to provide the technology, whose job is to provide the video recording platform, the video delivery platform, video streaming platform, online assessments platform. They will give you all these tools and technologies. So your job as an educator or an educational institution would be to offer courses using these tools, and learners will do those courses on that platform. And so they are not open in the sense of MOOCs, but so they will do in the entire certification course, they will have to pay certain fee to complete that particular course in an online mode. At the end of that course, they will get that certificate. Okay, so they will also provide lots of additional support, including teaching assistantship support, career services. They'll help you find a job, right? So this is also emerging as a big thing under the heading of continuous learning or continual professional education, right? So that is also an opportunity for educational institutions and educators themselves, right? So if you are an educator, you can sign up on those platforms as a subject matter expert, or if you're part of an education institution, your education institution itself can tie up with some technology service providers, and all of you as course instructors may get an opportunity to teach courses on behalf of the institution itself. Okay, so this is essentially a great opportunity that has now come up. Okay, so that essentially completes what I wanted to give you as an introduction to online courses, right? We have seen that there are plenty of benefits to the learners, needless to say, but they are very enormously beneficial to educators as well if we adapt ourselves to the digital technologies, right? So if you continue to offer online courses in exactly the same way we have been doing it in the classroom, then it is not beneficial. It is not beneficial to the instructor. It is not beneficial to the learner. Okay? Yes, there will be technology challenges, but if we overcome those technology challenges, then definitely all the benefits that are there that can be reaped. And to the best, I have been doing online courses for quite some time. There are really no major technology challenges which cannot be overcome with workarounds and other ways of doing. And you throw AI into the mix, then it's indeed a great time to design and offer online courses. Okay, and we also saw that online courses can be offered as many different models. They can be offered in open model, they can be offered in blended mode, they can be offered in synchronous, asynchronous. So many combinations are possible. We also saw that it can be offered in commercial mode, in free mode, online mode, MOOC mode, and so on. Okay, and we have to be conscious to the fact that student expectations are very different, and we have, as educators, we have to step up to meet those challenges. We have to create provisions to meet those challenges. Please remember that it does not mean that you as an individual will have to face all those challenges and solve it, right? So you should also create a support system that will help one as an instructor to overcome those challenges. The support system could include teaching assistants, technical support, and so on. Okay, so faculty members have to be really be adaptable. That's what I keep saying. We cannot be doing the same thing that we have been doing in the classroom. Okay. Finally, online platforms is something that we have to watch out. We have to keep an eye on. And from learners, anyway, they are keeping an eye on online learning platforms all around. And as educators also, we also have to keep an eye on it, and it indeed opens up enormous amount of opportunities for us to make an impact and do what we are good at in a much larger scale.